The Children's Defense Fund has been the voice of children in the halls of Congress, in state legislatures, in raising the consciousness of the American people to focus on issues that are unique to children. It's an organization that needs to be supported. It's an organization that needs to be exalted.
Organizations like CDF are absolutely essential to developing the next generation of leaders. Folks who will go on to serve an elected office, appointed office, people who will organize in communities to make a difference. If we don't have the incubators to educate young people, to equip them with the tools to be effective in that way, we won't have that ability to harness the power of youth to translate that into real consequential change for our country.
Movements don't start in Washington, they start in local communities and they bubble up. They have to be grounded in a community, and so I'm very proud of our New York office and of the young people who are finding their voice.
We do a lot of policy and advocacy within CDF, but I would say that one of my favorite programs is the Beat the Odds.
Despite homelessness, despite gun violence, despite losing parents, despite horrible experiences.
They're resilient and they're smart and they're determined, and they are social justice advocates. We give them training. We take them to City Hall to testify. We take them to Albany to testify. They meet with their elected officials.
You think about some of the most fundamental change movements in our country. So many of those start with young people who are pushing for change, who have the dynamism and the vision and the energy and the impatience to push for change.
Stand for us or beware, the voters are coming.
And I will fight for all of us.
Black lives matter. Black lives matter.
No Trayvon Martin could have been me.
We lose more children in 1 year to gun violence than we have lost in American battle casualties in Afghanistan and in Iraq. What is the matter with us? We are not going to stop until we have gun-safe America, and we can do that.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
It's been a path-breaking year, there's no question about it. The Parkland shooting was such a tragedy, but what it inspired across the country, the marches, not only in Washington, but everywhere. Our kids left their school that day has changed the landscape. One of the things we're seeing is that bringing down gun violence is bringing young people into politics.
Joining me, Julia Cordova, who's the senior class president of the Parkland Survivors. You've talked about keeping the conversation going, about having your voices heard. So where do you go moving forward?
We need gun control, we need tangible legislation passed for our students so we feel safe in our safe haven in our schools.
It is impossible not to be inspired by Julia Cordova and the other March for Our Lives children who have been working relentlessly since that tragedy.
Terrible tragedy, 4 people killed, all under 30 years old. Could have been even worse if not for the actions of James Shaw Jr., who wrestled the gun away from the shooter. James, at what point did you realize something terrible was happening?
He actually shot towards the bathroom area, and I was actually grazed with a bullet in my upper right elbow. After that, I think he had to reload. I saw an opportunity.
When I think about James Shaw and his intervention at the Waffle House, I think about his bravery. But what I'm most impressed about is that he took that experience and turned it into something positive, raising money for the victims, for the families of individuals who were killed. And he's really going into communities and advancing prevention programs to help young people stay away from dangerous situations.
I mean, this is a nation that is plagued with gun violence, and one of the ways I think we need to look at that whole question of gun violence is the impact that it has on the lives of young people. And the Children's Defense Fund, I think, has appropriately focused on that issue of gun violence, which is one that has, divided our nation. But I think if we focus on the impact that gun violence has on kids, that's a potential avenue for bringing the nation together around that very divisive issue.
Problem is you can't segregate it anymore. It's not other people's children, not just those black kids. It's not just those brown kids or those kids that are poor or living in the inner city. It's affected everybody. And so we've been obsessed with this for 3 decades. And there have been voices crying in the wilderness, and we'll keep at it.
Being in New York State, we certainly celebrate the comprehensive gun control package that was recently passed by our very progressive legislature. That doesn't mean our work is done. There is legislation pending on a federal level that needs to go forward for universal background checks. I see it as a step in the right direction, but not a resolution.
It's heartening to see young people now finding their voices and being heard. But that doesn't absolve adults from their responsibility as well to focus on the welfare and the plight of children.
For those of us who have enormous privilege, with that comes enormous responsibility, and I think it's even more incumbent on us to listen to children, because ultimately the best use of our privilege is trying to give it away, to ensure that more kids have more opportunities in more places. And I like to believe there's still more of us who hope for that than not.